Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar titled Left Behind Women with Disability During COVID-19, organized by the European Disability Forum. So my name is Marine Uldry, and I'm EDF Human Rights Officer. And before we start today, I would just like to share with you some logistical information and housekeeping rules on how this webinar is going to work. So all participants have their microphone muted. And EDF controls the permission to unmute. So please don't worry if you are trying to test your microphone and couldn't unmute it. We'll unmute you during the Q&A. In case you face any technical issues, you can write to my colleague Raquel through the chat box. The chat box should be located on the right of your screen. The webinar has international sign interpretation and captioning. You can find the link to access the real-time captioning in the chat box, and you should see our sign language interpreter already interpreting, and we want to thank them. Thanks very much. So Lisa, Gerdina, and the live team early. The webinar is being recorded and it will be available in a few weeks on our EDF website. You can also find the agenda of this webinar. You will be able to ask a question, take the floor. So to do that, please send us a request in the question box. The question box is also located on the right on the right of your screen when it's written questions. So please also specify your name, country, and organization when you are attending as a representative. When you will be asking a question, please mention to whom it is addressed. And for person using sign language, you can also let us know. So this way we can also turn on your webcam so it can be translated. If you have any difficulty to use the question box to ask questions, you can also send us written questions to the address email shown on the screen, and it's askedf2020@gmail.com. So askedf2020@gmail.com. So that's all for the technical information, and now I'm going to give the floor to Anna Peláez, who's our EDF Vice President, and who will open and moderate the webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Good afternoon, Marine. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well, Anna.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Today is a very important day for women and girls with disabilities in Europe, because thanks to this effort made by EDF, the European Disability Forum, we have the chance to talk about our own situation. The situation of more than 60 million of women and girls with disabilities in our region is more or less the population of Italy. Imagine how was the impact of the pandemic for this population. These population who are really left behind. And this is why this is the motto also for our slogan today, our webinar today. I'm on behalf of EDF, we are really very grateful to all the speakers today to reflect about how is the situation for women and girls with disabilities, especially in this region, but also in other regions of the world. And this is also why I would like to offer our warm welcome to all of our participants today during this webinar. Perhaps women and girls with disabilities and other participants coming from different countries, different regions. By the end of the webinar, we'll have the chance to listen to you. It's so important to know about your testimonies, and also you have the opportunity perhaps to express your concern or your questions to our wonderful panelists today. So in this moment, I would like to open this webinar to consider and to offer some update information about the situation of women and girls with disabilities. And to do that, we have a wonderful colleague who is Luisa Bosisio. Luisa is member of the EDF board, but Luisa is also member of the EDF Women's Committee. Luisa is speaking from Italy. Are you there, Luisa?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. So how is the situation for women and girls with disabilities in this moment, Luisa?
Yes. I start my speech thanking EDF and EDF staff for this opportunity for me to explain as far as possible the situation that you mentioned in the beginning. You say that we count more than 60 million of women and girls with disability. This is equivalent, as you said, the total population of my country, Italy. When my entire country was on lockdown, the world was watching videos of Italians singing from their balcony to cope with the difficult situation faced by my country. But who was paying attention to women and girls with disability? Who was talking and listening to them? No one. You may find my words difficult to hear, but this is how many women and girls with disability have been feeling during the pandemic, left behind, unheard, isolated, alone. Women and girls with disability, but also mother with disability, have been left behind by government. In a big majority of cases, government did not consult with women and girls with disability and organization of persons with disability on the measures needed to respond to the pandemic. Suddenly, countries forgot all about their obligation under the international human rights treaties they signed. The CRPD, signed by the EU and all its member states, and the CEDAW, signed by the all EU state members. As a consequence, women and girls with disability faced a rise of domestic violence with almost no way to report their situation. Domestic violence during the pandemic has increased by 1/3 in Europe. Even though violence may concern all of us women and girls with disability are already more likely to suffer from violence and abuse. But despite this fact, most available support and helplines are not accessible, and information about them is not provided in accessible formats. This leads to the result that women and girls are without access to help, left alone and isolated in an abusive environment. In my country, Italy, the Court of Milan stated at the end of May 60% fewer reports of violence than in the previous period. The pink phone, 1522 calls, decreased by 55% during coronavirus emergency. Anti-violence center, the most important in Milan, reported 50% less access to the center than in the previous period. This poses the problem of assisting or being victim of violence by minors forced to live with their families due to the lockdown. In fact, from 10 March to 31st May, the Juvenile Court, also in Milan, doubled its protective measure for minors. There are no data on the disability of these victims. The situation of women and girls with disability in closed setting has been particularly difficult. Firstly, because the situation in institution is awful, with a very high number of deaths. From my country, Italy, we only know that in healthcare residencies, the women are about 74% of the guests. Of the deaths for COVID by 30 April were 53.3% female. In the over 90s age group, women account for almost 80%. All these women and girls living there have been left isolated and without support. Support has also been cut outside of institution. We watched another lack of gender-sensitive response to the pandemic. Women with disability and single mother of children with disability, for instance, have been disproportionately left without support, both as persons with disability and as women. Just thinking about my colleagues from EDF's Women's Committee, I see how they have been left without assistance as mother and women with disability. We also receive reports that in cases where government provide necessary goods for persons who can leave their homes, such as in the UK, periodical hygienic products for women were not included. In some other countries, women have had a difficulty to exercise their sexual and reproductive rights. When this is the case for women in general, you can imagine how difficult it is for women with disability, who face more barriers to access sexual and reproductive health. Women with disability don't have equal access to health care, do not have any information services on women's cancer prevention, contraception, responsible motherhood, and voluntary interruption of pregnancy. There is no counseling for young women with disability on sexuality, affectivity, and identity development building. In an Italian study, specialist operators in obstetric and gynecology declare they do not consider the disability-related training received during their training to be adequate. In some cases, women and girls with disability have also left behind by their movement. The disability and women movement having difficulties to pay attention to their specific situation. Of course, it has not been the case everywhere, but because one movement thinks that the other will advocate for the rights of women and girls with disability, at the end, no one does. If it is true that the movement has difficulty in recognizing the urgency, in my country, Italy, during the COVID emergency, the disability movement supported the demand of women with disability. It has asked the institution to include them in their protective action. It has protested vehemently against our government when it did not do so. It has included specific references to gender equality, inclusion, and non-discrimination for persons with disability, women and men, in the final document of the Task Force for 2020-22 relaunch.
Luisa, 1 minute, please.
Yes, I want to conclude with a picture that I asked Anne-Sophie to show. Is a picture in which I'm showing the photo of a little girl standing on a wooden chair, her hands up in the air. In the background, her shadow against the wall is the shape of a grown-up dancing ballerina. My conclusion are, no one left behind means that every woman with a disability can dream of her future from childhood like any other child without disability. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Luisa. Thank you for bringing the voices of women and girls with disabilities during the pandemic. During this time, we have also good practices, sometimes from GPOs, taking into consideration the situation of women with disabilities, not really a lot of them, but some of them. But we have also the work of some organization of women with disabilities themselves. And in this case, I'm very glad to present now Isabel Caballero, who is the coordinator for Thermic Women's Foundation, to offer us some good practices taking into consideration and offer to women and girls with disabilities during this time of pandemic. Are you there, Isabel? Isabel, can you hear me? We are connecting with Madrid. Isabel, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, very
Hi
welcome,
there.
Isabel.
Hi,
You
Isabel.
unmuted, Isabel, but we cannot hear you.
Isabel, if you have some headphones, please just maybe try to take them off, or just sometimes it doesn't work. I see you are unmuted, but we can't hear you or see you. Okay, maybe I can talk to her, Marine, in the meantime, and Anna.
Yeah, perhaps we can continue with also another important response to the situation during the pandemic for women and girls with disabilities, who is the great job offered by the response made by the movement of women in globally. And to present this situation, I think the best person is Joanna Maycock, who is the Secretary General of the European Women's Lobby. Joanna, are you there?
Hello, Anna, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello, welcome from Brussels, I
Gracias.
imagine. Gracias a ti, thank you.
So
So how was the work during this time for the movement of women during the pandemic?
thank you so much, Anna, and thanks to all the team at the European Disability Forum for setting up this really important discussion and webinar today, and for inviting me to participate. The European Women's Lobby represents women's organisations throughout the European Union, and we work very closely with the European Disability Forum, and particularly with the Women's Committee of the European Disability Forum, so well represented here. As a movement, we have, of course, been highly impacted by the pandemic, and our members have mobilised across Europe to better understand the impact of the pandemic on women and girls in Europe. Women and girls are more than half of the population and are, of course, incredibly diverse, and include women and girls with disabilities, include women and girls who support family members with disabilities. And we have pulled together some analysis and recommendations in a publication that's going to be shared now in the chat box, looking at the impact of the pandemic across Europe on women and girls in general. And I'm going to pull out some specific points that, that make reference to the impact on women and girls with disabilities. I would say overall, there is a lot of concern about the impact of the response to the pandemic on women and girls, both in terms of the increased visibility, at least perhaps, or awareness of violence against women and girls that was already mentioned by Luisa, but also the socioeconomic impact and the health impact, as well as the access to essential services. There are people who are alarmed that we may be going backwards on gender equality as a result both of the pandemic response and also of the predicted recession, where we fear that unless we learn the lessons from the past financial crisis in 2008, where austerity measures disproportionately impacted on women and girls, more than 80% of the cuts to public services fell on the shoulders of women. And we know that that was disproportionate impact on women, women with disabilities, for example, who suffered greatly from the loss of public services and access to infrastructure and support and public support as well. So we want to make sure that the response to this pandemic learns from that and lays the foundations actually for us to make a turning point, a positive turning point, where we really start to make progress on equality between women and men, all women, as we go into the recovery or the response, the longer term response. So we think it's a political choice right now, and an important political moment where our decision makers need to ensure that the specific experiences, needs and rights of all women and girls are properly integrated into the financial and political response, so that women do not end up paying the price for the COVID pandemic. So what did we find? We found stories across Europe, millions of women who were finding that they were, with schools and creches and childcare and other care infrastructure closing, that women were disproportionately taking the burden of unpaid care in the domestic environment and even in the community environment. This is well documented, and it's once again nothing new. Women already do 3 times as much unpaid domestic work as men in Europe, but what became much more apparent when there was the loss of the public infrastructure to support care. This also obviously impacted on women's ability to participate in the labour market, either in paid work, working from home, or the very important work that women do at and have done and continue to do at the front line of provision of essential work and services throughout the pandemic. So women make up more than 70% of all workers in the health sector, and all of the least paid workers, of course. Also, they make up the vast majority of those working in retail, so supermarket checkouts, for example, and cleaners. So really essential part of the workforce when it comes to supporting society to stay in lockdown as well, so the rest of us can stay at home. So we also saw that women were more likely to be put on leave or furlough or made unemployed as a result of the pandemic. And we saw also that particularly access to other health services was limited. So Louisa already talked about some of those, but for example, access to sexual reproductive health and rights, access to abortion, which was limited in many cases. And we looked particularly throughout the recommendations that we made to the European Union in our paper that's shared in the chat box at the specific impact on women and girls with disabilities. And I wanted to share a few points there if I can still have another minute or so. But what we've seen is that women and girls with disabilities clearly face compounding issues, as is always the case, but is exacerbated during this crisis, particularly those with pre-existing health conditions or those living in institutional settings where we have seen the impact of the pandemic have been devastating in many cases. We've also seen, and I know many of you will have experienced this, that the access to ongoing quality services, support and care has been hugely disrupted and has left people in isolation or in danger in many cases. And the impact also, I must say, on mental health has been massive across the population, and particularly women have been really impacted by the additional stress and burdens and disruption into the care services. The issue of violence against women, again, violence against women is already a pandemic in the world. More than 50 women are killed every week by a partner or former partner in the European Union alone. For us, this is not a COVID crisis, it's a pre-existing crisis. But COVID has served, I think, to shine a light on what is already something that urgently needs to be eradicated and addressed seriously by our decision makers. And we know...
Johanna, 1 minute, please.
Okay. And we know that women with disabilities are more vulnerable to violence and domestic violence. So that was already mentioned, I think, by Louisa. There are issues and concerns around access to information, both public health and other information for all persons who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf blind, for example. And we need to make sure that all information is accessible to everybody. And then when it comes to what can the response be, I'd love to hear a bit more about that in the questions and from other speakers. But for us at the European Women's Lobby, we are really calling on the European Union to develop and implement a bold new care deal for Europe, a care deal that invests in care infrastructure, that provides quality care, provides quality jobs in the care sector, and that really responds to the needs and rights of all women and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all these reflections and information about the job and the work that you were doing during this pandemic, and how is the situation for women and girls in general, and especially for women and girls with disabilities. Thank you so much. I would like to try it again to connect with Isabel from Spain. I don't know if now Isabel is available to share good practices during this pandemic for women and girls with disabilities. Are you there, Isabel? Can you hear me? Raquel, how is the situation?
Yeah, the situation is that Isabel is trying to connect her audio, so we can just give her like 10 more minutes because she has to do something on her side. So
okay,
you
so
can
perhaps
move forward. Sorry.
We can give her some more time, and in this moment perhaps we can go to an important entity, which is UN Women, and in this regard, in relation with some recommendations on next step for women and girls with disabilities. And to do that, we have the pleasure to receive and to welcome Dr. Monjurul Kabir, Coordination Advisor on Gender Equality and Disability Inclusion in the UN System Coordination and Division of UN Women. So, sir, thank you very much to be in here with all of us today. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? You have the floor, sir.
Yes. Hi, can you?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, very well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And can you say video is all right?
Yes, the video is working. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you so much. This is always a privilege to be part of the discourse, and I must thank European Disability Forum and all partners and co-panelists and those who are connected, because as we are speaking, the whole world is in a emergency mode for some time, and we are continue to perceiving that this will here to stay, at least the economic impact in many countries. And I was particularly interested, given that you are focusing on also Europe, the region I served for UN during 2010-14. And the reason I'm mentioning this, when I was there as Human Rights and Justice Advisor, I have seen firsthand the impact of 2008 global economic crisis in the region and subsequent economic crisis in Europe, and how that has been used sort of to trim the budget for social sector, social security, and areas which is much needed for persons with disabilities, women with disabilities. And that was typically the earliest cut Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Social Protection would recommend. And as a result, the burden would be borne by persons with disabilities more than any other segments. Now, that is there, but that hasn't changed. It continues to remain the same. We have seen in this pandemic, over last 3 months, countries after countries, when they are reviewing their budgets, this is one area, sometimes left unaddressed, sometimes ignored, sometimes not prioritized. And I'm not saying that that has been always the deliberate case. It happened, and I'm not saying that the reallocation for other sectors is not needed. But sometimes it is not prioritized as it is. Recently, UN Women has looked into a survey, because our programs on the ground and our work with the partners, particularly for women with disabilities, how they're being impacted. And we looked at the survey that what are the impact in first 3-4 months of this pandemic is really leaving on the person with disabilities, particularly with women and girls. And we looked at the survey respondents in a recent survey on the impact of COVID-19. They shared that they had lost their job or had to take sick leave due to pandemic. That is not unique to persons with disabilities only, but found the job market was not friendly to them obtaining other employment or even accessing to other social services in the absence of jobs or during the financial hardship. There are, of course, a significant proportion who carry the burden of care in the family. Some of them are not only with disabilities, they are also parents of children with disabilities. That has also impact. They're also reporting this concern, given particularly the intersection of gender and disability, where you are really dwelling on multiple forms of discrimination. In addition to losing their income, many of them are not eligible for adequate social protection from the government. These changes in employment status and access to income alongside with pre-existing circumstances. My co-panelists already mentioned that pre-existing conditions are nothing new. It was there before. As we looked at SDG implementation and leaving no one behind, we realized a lot of cases, not only systemic practices of discrimination has increased, but also there are issues of violence, as my colleagues also mentioned, violence within home, violent practices in different institutional setting has increased, or there are more opportunities and potential, which is also creating a kind of environment which is not useful and beneficial for those who are suffering this pandemic more than ever. Now, I just want to also point out that in terms of accessing formal and informal services, when we looked at violence against women and how it impacted women with disabilities, we also realized that often accessing essential services, whether it is calling a dedicated telephone number for help, whether it is asking for ambulance support, whether it is asking for transportation support so that they can go to nearest, whether it is shelter, whether it is social sector support services or one-stop crisis center, it has become a challenge in terms of accessing these facilities. It has become a challenge for women in general, but it has become further challenge for women with disabilities. And sometimes these different phone numbers, and particularly we are seeing it in many towns, when government set up dedicated phone number for services, for emergency contacts, those intuitive technology-driven support services are often not accessible to a wide spectrum of persons with disabilities, including women. And we are calling on governments in everywhere so that they can ensure these services can be more accessible. It is important to dedicate all these one-stop crisis centers to address violence and other pressing issues, but it's also important to widen the reach so that it really benefits those who need it most. And then we are also sensing a number of other challenges, which is more of a long-term economic impact is already showing. It is not only on job loss or lack of access to services or lack of access to support mechanism that they require for families and for groups of families and institutional setting improved environment, but also when there is a recession possibility, you will also see city council, local council, municipalities are often cutting their services, which is adversely impacting them. Now, so that is incredibly important that we work not only with federal government or state government, we also work with local city councils. We're making sure that they understand these dynamics and the challenges. And therefore, and we are looking into a number of possibilities of partnership at different countries, different level. But we realize that sometimes city council, local councils are not brought into the national planning process, particularly in this crisis.
Sir,
That is
one
also,
minute. One
sure.
minute, please.
Absolutely. And so therefore we are calling on governments and actors both in Europe and also outside in other regions, whether it is in Asia Pacific, in Africa, Latin American, Caribbean, Arab states, and particularly in some region, you have also challenges of refugees, you have challenges of humanitarian crisis, you have challenges of ongoing migrant workers saga of their own access. Recently, we have done a regional events in Arab states where we look how migrant workers' plight interplayed with women with disabilities and how it is impacting their lives. Not only they're part of family member, but also in some countries, women with disabilities are also working in the neighboring country, and not only loss of job or loss of economic opportunity, but also how they are stand off in a third country and unable to return or unable to access to services or secure services in countries other than of their own. And this has been challenge for everyone, but particularly more those who are with disabilities, with women and girls. So I think if one thing I would like to see as a follow-up of this outcome is those, all of us who are participating, perhaps continue to follow up in our respective angle and perhaps commit to do one thing better on the ground. And on behalf of UN Women, I would be happy to continue to collaborate and be in touch with you and learn from your experiences, especially good practice where you are seeing some of the good things are happening. We'll be happy to look into this and share and apply together with you. Thank you very much for this invitation, and thank you very much to be part of this panel today. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you really for your presence here today, also with this strong message in relation that women and girls with disabilities, we are women too. So that means we need to be covered and to support by UN Women. Thank you very much for your presence today here in this webinar. I'd like to try it again. If we have finally my colleague Isabel with us to offer some good practices in relation with the consideration of women and girls with disabilities during the pandemic. Are you there, Isabel, this time?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me, Anna?
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Very welcome, welcome. Could you please tell us how was the experience of Thermi Women's Foundation working with women and girls with disabilities during the pandemic in these last months and weeks, please?
Okay, Anna. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking into consideration the work of Thermi Women's Foundation in defending the human rights of women and girls with disabilities. And as you well know, Spain has been one of the countries hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. Spain's total number of infection has exceeded 244,000 since the outbreak started, and the total number of deaths is 27,136. So, and at least 19,000 people in Spain have died in social service residences due to the coronavirus or with compatible symptoms. The figure includes homes for seniors and also for those with disabilities. So this tragic reality has highlighted the shortcomings of these residences and the urgent need to implement a new model. And right now, this is an intense debate in my country. It's an intense debate on this matter. On March 14, the state of alarm was declared for the management of the health crisis situation. And from the beginning, we were aware of the negative impact that the lockdown could have on many women and girls with disabilities. In this context, our concern focused especially on the situation of those women with disabilities victims of violence, who in this exceptional situation were forced to live with their abusers. Violence against women with disabilities is an issue that in recent years has been gaining space on the political agenda. Well, at present, there are no official statistics in Spain that can give us a real picture of the situation. And we only have one official indicator, which was established in 2012, which shows the number of women with disabilities who are killed every year by their partners or former partners. And it's about 6% of the total. But we are sure that the real percentage is higher because in many cases, this disability situation is completely ignored. According to the latest data offered by the Delegation for Gender Violence in Spain, there has been important increase in requests for help during the lockdown. It's important to note also that the Spanish Interior Ministry instructed police to intensify their contact with 60,000 women under protection orders. We don't have a statistical data of the total number of women with disabilities in this situation, but we can confirm that there has been a significant increase in the number of inquiries related to violence sent to our services by women with disabilities during this period of lockdown. That's the reason why one of the first decisions adopted by Thermi Women's Foundation was to facilitate access to information on resources for women with victims of violence, ensuring accessibility. And we published a document with practical guidelines to report cases of gender violence. And this document also includes general and specific resources, for example, the legal orientation service that our organization provides to women with disabilities, victims of violence, and also information regarding a service for women with hearing disabilities, which is provided in this case by the Spanish Confederation of Deaf People. Another major concern was the isolation that women with disabilities and women caregivers of people with disabilities had to face in this period of lockdown due to the impossibility of developing face-to-face activities and the obligation to maintain a distance of safety. In order to overcome these obstacles, our organization decided to create a virtual meeting space in which women and girls with disabilities could meet weekly to address different aspects related to the coronavirus pandemic. These virtual meetings, webinars, are a kind of mutual support groups, but also a forum for information, debate, and advocacy. And these webinars, its title is No Estás Sola. It means you are not alone. It started on April the 29th. And since then, we have held one webinar every week with an average participation of 200 women from Spain and from different European and Latin American countries. And we plan to hold a total of 14 webinars focused on different topics: health, care management, gender violence, access to employment opportunities, and the role of women with disabilities in the reconstruction process. These webinars are in the Spanish language, but well, I invite you to connect every Wednesday at 4 p.m. And I will leave the connection link in the chat in case you are interested. Other activities carried out by Thermi Women's Foundation during this period have been the design of research activities on violence against women with disabilities in different regions in Spain, within the framework of the State Pact on Gender Violence. This is a pact adopted in 2017 to promote public policies focused on prevention, detection, and treatment of gender violence. And precisely one of the measures contained in the pact is the generation of knowledge about gender violence against women and girls with disabilities. We have also been working on the writing of a new report on human rights of women and girls with disabilities in Spain. The report focuses on the right to health, and it will be released in the coming weeks. And the topic of the report was chosen before the pandemic, and that's the reason why the impact of the coronavirus is not addressed in the paper. And every year, Thermi Women's Foundation prepares and publishes a report on the human rights situation of women and girls with disabilities. 2 reports have been published so far, and one on sexual and reproductive rights, and another one on the right to decent work. And well, to finish my speech, I just
one minute, please.
Yes, I think it's important to remark that all this work have been carried out with the support and the advice of the Council for Participation of Women with Disabilities of Fermi Women's Foundation, which is an instrument to give direct voice to all women and girls with disabilities in Spain through their representative organizations, both organizations of people with disabilities and specific organization of women. And the Council is consulted in advance in all matters when it's necessary. And this is a way to promote the exchange of experiences, debates, and discussions on the social reality of women and girls with disabilities. Well, thank you very much for your attention, and we here to answer your question in the debate.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very, very much for sharing these good practices, perhaps also available, useful for other organizations in Europe or in other countries. So perhaps if you want to take information about all these issues, you can go to the website of Fermi Women's Foundation. Perhaps you can share, Isabel, also in the chat the link to go to the web. So thank you so much. How important is really collecting data, collecting information about how is the situation for women and girls with disabilities, and this is something which is also taken into consideration by the European Institute of Gender Equality. And I would like to welcome now in this moment Dr. Mar Carew to address this issue. Are you there, Dr. Mar Carew?
Hello, yes, I am here.
Hello, welcome. I imagine you are in Lithuania. Are you?
Actually, I'm in Estonia, in my home country.
Okay.
So yes, EGA is located in Lithuania, but we do telework a lot from places where we are from.
Very good, very good. Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me for this very interesting webinar. It's my first. Yes, I will tell you about a bit what EGA has been doing regarding women and men with disabilities. A couple of years ago, we in EGA adopted this approach that we take an intersectional perspective to all our research. This means that, of course, women and men are the most important for us as Gender Equality Institute, but we need to acknowledge that there is more diversity within these groups of women and men. So, and if we want to pin down actual causes, find solutions to inequalities, we have to look deeper. And we find it very informative for the policymakers. And of course, among other axes of inequalities, we look at disability. The research and data has shown how different inequalities accumulate: poor health, low education, inactivity, low income, high poverty. These often go hand in hand. And women with disabilities very often stand out, unfortunately, and not in a good way. So, and at the moment, we are working on Gender Equality Index that will be released on 29th of October. It's online, so you're all welcome to join us. And as usual, we also look our statistics concerning women and men with disabilities. Gender Equality Index, as a background, is a statistical tool. We look at gender equality across the EU, monitoring it throughout time. And we look at different aspects of life: work, money, time use, power, decision-making, education, health. But this year is very different. We started this work before COVID pandemics, but now we can't ignore it at all and come out with any analysis which doesn't take this into account. But what we have seen is that inequalities for women and also men with disabilities are very difficult to assess the impact of COVID-19. We rely on very large surveys, which would cover all EU to be useful for the European Union and each member state. But this is a very slow process. We still have data from 2018 mostly. So 2020 will be in a couple of years only. There are ad hoc surveys carried out on COVID-19 and its impact, but and these are much quicker. But the ones which I have seen never really take into account women and men with disabilities. I mean, disability in general in big surveys is not among things which is always asked, because I mean, gender, education, all kinds of different axes of inequalities are mostly there. You can analyze it, but to assess the situation of women with disabilities is not very easy. And if the information is there, it's not very detailed either. And once we tried also, I mean, I am very sorry that it has been only once, but we tried to look at girls and children with disabilities. And that was even more difficult. Joanna called Europe to adopt new care deal for all women and girls. We tried to look at the care services, home-based long-term care services for children with disabilities, and we failed to find any data which would be EU-wide and comparable. So what we can do in this situation, we draw from pre-COVID statistics. We assume that COVID-19 is reinforcing inequalities, and we learn from previous economic crises to see what kind of possible impacts there could have been. And just some small evidence, which not small, small examples of what we have in the index and what we can use for this kind of assumptions in a way. For example, Gender Equality 2020, Gender Equality Index 2020 will talk, among other things, that women with disabilities have the poorest health situation among all kinds of groups. And at the same time, they also have the most problems with getting medical care. The unmet need is the highest. It's not like dramatic in the sense that 7% of women and 6% of men with disabilities have unmet need for medical care. But this most likely was very strongly impacted by the COVID as the quarantine and all the medical services overwhelmed. But for women and men with disabilities, or in general, the most common reason for unmet need for medical services is cost. It's too expensive. For women with disabilities, poverty is high, particularly high. It's, for example, in 2018, 35% of working age women and also men, the same percentage, with disabilities are at risk of poverty. It's lower among older women and men with disabilities. The employment rates are low, so we can expect that the COVID impacts women and men with, and women particularly with disabilities very strongly in terms of poverty and employment, but the actual numbers we can see only in a couple of years. And what is interesting, for example, is that care has been talked about a lot. For women with disabilities, the main reason for being inactive, not in the labor market, is that they say that they are fulfilling domestic tasks and care responsibilities. They cannot attend labor market. So they are not only care receivers, they are also care providers. So this is also a very important aspect to take into account. And for men, the main reason, for men with disabilities, the main reason not to be in the labor market is disability. So there are very interesting differences. And if you want to tackle the labor market situation of women and men, particularly women with disabilities during the COVID or outside of COVID, you need to know what is happening to these people. What are the reasons? What are the causes? And of course,
just 1 minute, please.
Yes, I'm about to finish. And the social protection was mentioned as well. This is very important, and we don't have much information about that either. Flexible work and non-standard forms of work, for example, have been, among other things, been promoted as something that can help people with disabilities or less or any other problems, let's say, which don't allow full participation in the labor market to attend labor market. But these are very seldom covered by social protection. So this is kind of two-sided sword. So what I want to say as a conclusion, to have a successful policy response for the COVID-19, which would take into account everybody and most vulnerable as a first place, women and girls with disabilities, you need to know what is the situation, what has happened to this group of people during COVID or any other kind of pandemic. And for this, we need data. And I called for improvement of data collection and accepting or acknowledging that disability has to be one of the among social demographic indicators, which is always asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I invite DPOs and organizations and women with disabilities to share information, to share data collection about the situation of women with disabilities, which is really fundamental in order to improve their own situation. So in this moment, we are really in the end of the list of speakers, but it's a crucial issues to consider the impact of the pandemic on the implementation of the gender equality strategy in the EU. So to address this issue, we have with us Elizabeth White, who is the representative of the Gender Equality Unit of the European Commission. Elizabeth, are you there? Hello, Elizabeth? Can you hear me?
Hi, Elizabeth. I see you're connected, but you need to unmute yourself. I don't have control over your microphone. Hi, Elizabeth. So you need to unmute yourself. Can you please try?
Technology is not very easy for everyone. I had also some problems at the beginning.
Yeah. So Elizabeth,
are you there, Elizabeth? So perhaps we can wait a little.
Yeah, Anna, just Elizabeth, because you're connected through your smartphone, you need to introduce a PIN code that I just sent you to unmute. If you can please try.
It's okay, Elizabeth. I think perhaps we can. Hello, Elizabeth?
No, maybe I can try to speak to her, Anna, in the meantime.
Okay, don't worry.
Sorry.
We can try it a little later. But in this moment, we can open the floor to our participants, the people who are following this webinar. You are very welcome to present your testimonies, your questions, your reflections. So the floor is yours now. Marin, could you please help me on that? Who is asking for the floor?
Yes, so we received a few questions already. Just to tell all the participants that then we will unmute yourself so you can ask your question orally. The first question we received is from Chora Fleury. So I don't know, Raquel, I know that she's speaking with Elizabeth, so I will try to unmute Chora. I think now you're unmuted.
Hi, it's Chauria Fleury from the International Disability Alliance. Hola, Ana, ¿cómo estás?
Hi, Chauria, very welcome. Hello, how are you?
Thank you very much. Everything's fine. As you know, for IDA is really extremely important, all these discussions, and many thanks for having us. So what we'd like to know is very practical advice from the panelists on how we could, in our advocacy and also with EDF, our member in the regional advocacy, to influence and push a little bit further the women's rights movement to be more inclusive of the women with disability rights movement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Claudia. We are going to take some more questions and then we go back to our panelists. So who is the next, Marine?
Yes, so we have a question from Ellie from Rwanda. I just want to mention, because she wanted to ask first a question to Dr. Kabir representing UN Women, that unfortunately Dr. Kabir had to go because he had another meeting, but you can ask, of course, your question to other panelists. So we're giving the floor to Ellie.
Ellie, welcome. So nice to have you here from Rwanda.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. Anyone can respond to my question, because I wanted to ask if there is anyone who can share good practice about how to take information to other people with disabilities in rural areas where we don't have this technology facilities, or even social media, because it is where we get information from. And we are wondering, how do you inform these people with disabilities about the pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We can take also some of their question, and we can also consult UN Women to offer also some answers to you. Thank you very much. And perhaps the last question, intervention or reflections, testimony, Marine?
Yes, so we have a question from Claire Dessin from France. Claire, if you want to ask your question.
Claire, bonjour, bon après-midi. Hello, Claire. Hello, Claire.
Let me check. Yeah, Claire, we cannot hear you, unfortunately. I have your question in written, so maybe I can read it, and we can try it later on. So...
I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the importance of the Claire's Organization of Women and Girls with Disabilities, Femmes pour le dire, Femmes pour agir, which is an organization working in France for women with disabilities, victims of violence. For sure, they were working very hard also during this time of pandemic. Perhaps you can share with us some information in the chat, Claire, if you have problem to connect with audio or with video. But I would like to try it again before going back to our panelists. If Elizabeth is already prepared to tell us about the impact of the pandemic in the EU gender equality strategy. Elizabeth, are you ready to intervene? Raquel, how is the situation with Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just received a message from her saying that she's connected, but we can't hear you, Elizabeth. You need to introduce the PIN that I just sent you. I see you're connected, but you need to unmute yourself. I don't have control. Can you please try, Elizabeth? Just I'm resending it again.
Hello, Elizabeth. Okay, so perhaps we can go back to our panelists, and I would like to pass these questions to our the people who are with us. Perhaps Luisa, how is your advice in relation with the three issues offered by our participants? How we can influence, for example, to consider the situation of women and girls with disabilities in rural areas, in other civil society organizations, and so on. What is your advice on that, Luisa?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. No, at the moment I have no suggestion on this item, but we can ask to our organization and make this specific question. Bear in mind that the rural areas in Italy are not so frequent. Maybe we can speak about women and girls living in isolated setting. So I can. This is a good question, and I forward it to our organization for the next for the future.
Thank you, Luisa. Perhaps Isabel, could you please offer your advice on that?
Isabel just left, Anna.
Okay. So what about Johanna? Are you there, Johanna?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I would really love to respond to the question about how can we be more inclusive in the women's movement of the participation, inclusion of women with disabilities. I think it's a really, really important question. One of the things I think that's really been quite effective, though clearly not enough yet, is the relationship that we've built with the European Disability Forum Women's Committee, which is a really important vector of building relationships, of building analysis of the rights and needs and situations of women and girls with disabilities in Europe, and is very closely connected with our work. So we had this year, we had the opportunity to have an exchange with the Women's Committee together with our executive committee, which is our our board, a part of our board, to have an opportunity to know one another and to exchange on how we could cooperate more closely. There is a member of EDF's Women's Committee who's also a member of our executive committee. So there is a person who is a brilliant person, Pirkko Alamaki from Finland, who may be on this call somewhere, who also is a really important person in bringing both of our agendas together and us as people. But there is more we need to do, and I think some of it relates to the information, making sure that we have the right data, the right information, the right advocacy asks. That was already talked about by the sister from IGA. But I think there's also a question about how we can actually be more inclusive across the board. And there is currently, we are partnering with EDF for a piece of research, action research, to look into this very question, actually. So there's a doctoral research candidate person who is based out of Ireland, and our office is in Brussels, who's precisely asking this very question, because we all believe there is more that needs to be done. So everything, I think there are many, many answers, but I'm really looking forward to that research, and we are really committed as a movement, as a women's movement in Europe, and as an organization, to be to advance and make sure that we are ever more inclusive of women with disabilities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I would like to take these opportunities, if you allowed me, also to offer my reflection on that as chair of the EDF Women's Committee. And I think we need to address really these important issues in consideration with women and girls with disabilities in three different ways. The first way is that we need to ensure that the consideration, the gender dimension, is really taken into consideration in the DPOs. And this is not happening. Sometimes we have working groups, we have some positive action, but this is not really to take into consideration this gender dimension in the work of the DPOs. So this, I miss this issue in most of the DPOs. The second one is more or less the same in relation with the women's movement. Following the information provided by UN Women, 19 0.2% of the female population are women with disabilities. Every 5 women, 1 has a disabilities. But the presence, the consideration of the disabilities in the movement of women is missing. It's the same situation that we see in the TPOs, more or less. So we need to change this dimension because we are talking about a fifth of the female population. A fifth of the female population where is really forgotten, who is not recognized as women. And we need to work on that. My third recommendation is to support organization of women with disabilities, organizations or consultations directly to women and girls with disabilities. Talking about Europe, for example, and talking about 60 million of women and girls with disabilities, 600 million of women and girls with disabilities in the world is not foreseen. Why we don't have any global or regional organization of women with disabilities? Why is so impossible, so difficult to establish organization of women with disabilities? Why? Why is not really supported by the TPOs and by the women's movement? And in relation with the rural areas and in relation with women with disabilities, just talking about my country. In my country, 2/3 of the women with disabilities are over 60 years old. Most of them don't have any skills to use technical instruments. Technical, for example, mobile phones. They don't have internet connection. They don't have any skills to use, for example, data in mobile phones. So we need to ensure this population of women with disabilities has really equal opportunities to access to the society of information, digital information society, which is fundamental to ensure that they are well connected. We need to work in the rural areas and we need to bring our effort to this environment, which is fundamental to leave no one behind. So this is my assessment in this, my recommendation in this issue. So perhaps we can go again trying to give the floor to Elizabeth. Raquel,
Claire,
I don't know.
I am Claire, can you hear me now?
Ah, this is Claire.
Yes.
Hello, Claire. Welcome.
I have changed computer.
Ah, very good, very good. So how is the situation in your organization, Femmes pour le dire, Femmes pour agir, during this pandemic?
Yes, we had quite a difficulty at first to keep our telephone number. And after 2 weeks, we could have again écoute, hearing for women with disabilities. And we saw that during the lockout, the violence was, there were not more to call. But after, when now we can go out, we had a lot of increase. I think it's because before, when they were forced to stay at home, they could not call. But afterwards, when they can go out, they increase in calls for violence.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing. And also, I think we must think about education too, because in our countries, pupils can go to school only half of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite a question for the children with disabilities to have also an assistant to go to school.
Yes.
And there was a bit of stress for people with mental disability, because sometimes they could not see anyone, because, you know, in institutions, either they were they had to go back to their parents, or either the institutions could not let parents come to see them. So there was a big stress, I think, for people with mental disability. And also, and I wanted also to say what you just said, Hannah, about the numerical gap between people, and information is not often accessible to people with disabilities. A lot of work on computers are not accessible, even from the state. And so I think there is a lot to do about accessibility of information, and about children, and about transports too. And in France, you know, restaurants and cafes now, they can enlarge their terrace, and so now people cannot see well. The pedestrians are in difficulty to walk, and for people who are not seeing, it's difficult.
No, it's clear. Thank you so much for all these contributions, all these issues so fundamental. Now there are new obstacles for people with disabilities affecting, of course, women with disabilities, such as, for example, the new obstacles due to the terrace, for example, in the pavement, or, for example, also the use of the mask for people who need to communicate with following the information by the face. So yes, new obstacles for people with disabilities affecting also women and girls with disabilities. Claire, thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to try for last time if Elizabeth is already there. Elizabeth, are you there? Perhaps Marine or Raquel can inform us about her situation.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you're connected, and I can see you, your microphone on. Can you please try to speak?
Hello, Elizabeth. Hello.
Okay, yeah, I think she can't manage with the phone. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but I see everything is connected. The audio is okay, so.
Oh, it's a pity. Okay, in this case, Marine, perhaps we can go back to our participants.
Moderator, can I just add one point? This is Monjurul from UN Women.
Ah, for sure. I thought that you were out.
Yeah. Yes, I left, attended another event, and I come back and I saw that you are on. So I thought that, okay, I'll join.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. You are very welcome, please.
No, thank you very much. So of course I missed a few part. So my apologies if you have already covered it. But one of the other area that we had a lot of concern is particularly two typology of countries. One is countries in conflict or recovering from conflict, and another is, of course, where you have ongoing or pre-existing humanitarian situation, whether it is natural or man-made. Particularly on the typology of conflict and post-conflict countries, where health system is particularly vulnerable in a normal situation, we are seeing a lot of challenges now, given that the breakdown of the health system or recovery of the health system hasn't happened before this pandemic, and therefore the pandemic added toll. And what we are hearing, particularly for women with disabilities access to social services, for legal aid, for representation, or accessing other emergency services and social safety net is particularly broken, and often they are totally disconnected. So I would, leveraging this network and colleagues, I would particularly urge as well to highlight these issues and challenges of countries with fragility, countries with conflicts, active conflicts or not so active conflicts. Secretary General's calls for global ceasefire in a number of countries, there has been a ceasefire between warring parties. And we also want to go beyond the ceasefire and see where women are caught in the conflict zones and trapped, and particularly women with disabilities, so that they are not left alone, left behind. And in humanitarian setting, we are also developing checklists together with other interagency partners, so that the humanitarian rescue, evacuation, and then resettlement and recovery phase particularly address the concern and challenges for women with disabilities. Thank you, and over.
No, thank you, Monjurul, for this contribution. I would like to take this opportunity to offer, as a member of the CEDAW committee, who I am, I would like to offer also information about the guidance offered by the CEDAW committee in relation with the consideration of women and girls in general during the pandemic, where the disabilities is also taken into consideration. Perhaps, Marine, we can share with our colleagues the guidance offered by the CEDAW committee also in this regard. Thank you so much. So I don't know if we have new voices from our participants here in the webinar before closing. Marine?
Yes, so we still have like a few questions. One question from Petra Flieger. She's from Austria.
Hello, Beth. What is the name?
Petra.
Petra. Okay. So Austria for me is easier. Sorry. Are you there, Petra?
Okay, we cannot hear you. You unmuted, but we cannot hear you. But it was a question on data, and she was asking to Dr. Caru whether the data from EAGER consider women and girls with disabilities living in institution.
So perhaps could you please answer, because the question is directly to you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Very good question. Well, what our study was about home-based long-term care. And there is more information about institutions in general than home-based care, because this is differently organized across countries, and it's very difficult to collect data in a very comparable way. So I believe there is some information, yes, about the institutions, but on the home-based care, that was the difficult part, if I understand your question correctly now.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. I think perhaps we can take the last question, because we have just 2 minutes for closing. Marine?
Yes, so we also have a question from Spain, from, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Angeles Blanco.
Yes. Angeles, hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Hi, Anna, but Angeles just left.
Hello, can you hear me?
No,
yes,
no, she's
Angeles,
here. Okay.
welcome.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to congratulate because of the webinar. I think it's a great opportunity to tackle this issue, because it's very important to take into account the needs of women and child with disabilities. I would like to ask some to put in the debate the fact of palsy women with disability, palsy women, because they not only need technical needs, but especially they need a human personal assistant who ensure their participation in society. And if we don't tackle this economically, we are gonna leave behind them, because we have to realize that because of their disability, their plural disability, they live or they face an overexpense. So, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Angeles. This is fundamental. Perhaps, do you have any advice or any answer on that, Mr. Monjurul?
No, hello?
Yes.
Only, not specifically on this. One advice I have as kind of moving forward, and I'm sorry for being very, very practical always. I always want to see what results we can achieve of this. Is there any way we can develop a also kind of checklist for us out of this, that all of us are facing the similar challenges in different elements, and can we look at least a couple of factors which we can then follow up as part of this or beyond? Because what has a very good experience for me, especially I was just connected when I disconnected from this webinar, we are developing a particular checklist for humanitarian and socio-economic response for UN response to COVID-19, and we looked at the angle of disability inclusion, and of course I was pushing for women with disability aspects as well. It could be a nice for EDF and others to also step into this particular area and see from your mandate and work area where we can develop a kind of checklist or few critical concerns that we must as together address, and we can also add to that. Over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this contribution. I think now time is over. It's time to finish here, to stop here. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude, especially to for Marine. Marine, you were great preparing this webinar, the panel, the program. Thank you so much, Raquel, also for supporting us, for connecting all the people, all the participants. Thank you, all the speakers. Yes?
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Actually, we have one last chance to hear from Elizabeth for 5 minutes. Do you think it's still possible?
Yes, I think if we can use our sign language interpreters and the person who is providing the subtitles, I don't have any problems at all.
Okay,
Elizabeth,
I'm on the phone with Elizabeth and she's on speaker. So now, Elizabeth, you should be heard.
Okay, Elizabeth, welcome finally.
You can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties. So coming in at the very end of everything, I've at least been able to listen to the discussion and to my fellow panelists. And I just want to make a few remarks on the gender equality strategy that the European Commission launched in March. First of all, thank you so much, of course, for inviting me to this event today. Thank you so much to the European Disability Forum, and for this opportunity to give a brief comment from the Commission in connection to the gender equality strategy. As has already been described and so well illustrated by previous speakers, we know that this pandemic has really hit women and girls hard, and in particular, women and girls that are already living under conditions of vulnerability, such as women with disability and girls with disability. This Commission has put equality in all its senses as a very high priority for the mandate. And for the first time, we actually also have a commissioner with equality as a standalone portfolio, Commissioner Dolly. So now it's time to recommit and step up the work. And our first deliverable on this commitment was the strategy that was launched in March, just before the lockdown and just before the pandemic sort of took its grip on us all. This strategy presents key objectives and policy objectives and actions for this time period. It reaches between 2020 and 2025 to deliver the President's promise of a union of equality. And as has already been said by many today, it is a crucial moment in time for us to work on combating structural gender inequality. And we are committed to implement the strategy, and we are going ahead full speed despite the challenges that we're facing with COVID-19 pandemic. We are this strategy is focused on 3 goals on an overarching level. It's focusing on ensuring freedom from violence and stereotypes, and making sure women and men have equal opportunities to thrive, and guaranteeing that women and men have equal chances to lead. And despite, like I've already mentioned, the challenges that we're facing, these actions remain a very high priority for the Commission. And many of the key actions presented in the strategy are also addressing some of the challenges that we have talked about today. And we are going to meet them with some of the challenges, some of these actions that were presented in the strategy, such as creating fair labor market conditions for women and combating gender-based violence and stereotypes. And actions that we have already started working on. We are working very hard to conclude the EU's accession to the Istanbul Convention to combat gender-based violence. And if this is a process that remains blocked in Council, the Commission has already announced that we are prepared to propose other measures in order to achieve the same objectives as the Istanbul Convention would. We are also working on achieving better conditions for women in the labor market, and empowering women in the labor market is a very important priority also presented in the strategy. And there we have a measure which is also a flagship for the Commission, which is to present binding measures on pay transparency. And we've also talked a lot about how unpaid work and care responsibilities is very much carried by women, which was already the case before the pandemic, that has been underlined. And also there, we're working on tackling gender stereotypes. One of the measures that we are now implementing is the Work-Life Balance Directive, and a campaign to enforce and boost the implementation in the member states. And this campaign, we hope and think, will also support an increased sharing of care and domestic work between women and men. We are working with an intersectional approach to implementation of all these measures. It's a horizontal principle to work on gender equality with a horizontal approach. We have already also talked about this today, how important it is that we understand that women and girls in all of their different situations need to be reached with the actions and initiatives that we launch. One of the specifically implementing to reach also women and girls in situations with in particular vulnerability is research, and we're under the strand of Daphne to fund projects tackling gender-based violence, in particular then as a priority to reach women and girls in situations of vulnerability. We are also combining the implementation of this gender equality strategy will build on intersectional synergies with other strategic frameworks. And we have coming up a disability strategy. This will also, we will improve gender mainstreaming in the forthcoming disability strategy. And this is something that we are already working on to ensure that there's a gender perspective in the new disability strategy. This was a brief overview, and thank you for letting me come in this late.
No, it was a pleasure, Elizabeth. Thank you for your passion, and also for waiting until the last moment to be able to transmit your message. Thank you very, very much for your contribution. As I mentioned before, we are now over time, so I was expressing my gratitude to Marine for preparing the program, contacting the people, for Raquel helping all of us for connection, all the speakers for the wonderful contributions, all the participants for their comments, their reflections, questions, and also the sign language interpreters and the person who is providing the subtitles, who are fundamental to ensure the communication here in the webinar today. I would like also to inform all of us on behalf of EDF that we have already planning to organize a new webinar by November this year in relation with violence against women and girls with disabilities. And I would like also to offer that the information about the Istanbul Convention is already in accessible format in our website. So in case that you are interested in to use it, and we would like also to invite all of you to translate the Istanbul Convention to your own languages, which is fundamental to ensure that women with disabilities from the whole region can access to this important tool to protect them about violence and abuse. So with this word, I think we need to close the webinar today. Once again, thank you all of you for your presence, your support, and for accompanying us during this time today to talk about women and girls with disabilities during the pandemic. Thank you so much for your reflections and contributions. Thank you.